What's going on, you guys? This is your boy RBG, aka The Random Black Gamer, bringing you a breakdown on Netflix Devil May Cry Season 2. It's been a little over 24 hours since the trailer dropped, and I thought I would just talk about it in detail and let you guys know what could possibly be seen once we actually get the season on Netflix. And there has been a lot of talk and speculation, some with heavy criticism based on certain things, such as the big reveal of Vergil, who has a unique sounding voice, and we're going to talk about that later. But before we get into today's topic, I want to ask you guys to do me the biggest favor and like this video. Yeah, I know it's a bit annoying getting this request at the very beginning of the video before you watch it in its entirety, but YouTube's algorithm encourages it. So if you rock with your boy and you know I'm going to bring you that awesome content, then smash that like button. But if you just so happen to be new to the channel and you feel like I've wasted 10 minutes of your time, then feel free to retract that like and give it a dislike. Just rate the video. But yeah, guys, as soon as this thing hit the internet, it got a lot of people talking within the fandom. Those who were introduced to Devil May Cry through the first season are actually looking forward to it, but longtime fans who are kind of disappointed in the first season have a lot of criticisms going into this second one, because some of the things that were shown off in this new trailer are reminiscent of the things that people had complaints about for the first one. And if you're wondering what I thought about season 1, I think it did a pretty good job just translating some of the things that I love about Devil May Cry to an animated format. I definitely would pick this one over the one that was produced by Madhouse in 2007 because it just seems like the pacing is a lot better, and I enjoy Dante's personality a lot more in this one because it felt more akin to Devil May Cry 3 Dante. And that's not to say that 07 anime Dante's personality deviated from the games, because it definitely fell in line with the more tamed and relaxed personality that we saw with DMC1 Dante. I just prefer the more high energy Dante that they used throughout the series in the later entries like DMC 4 and 5. The only thing that I really had a problem with was the power scaling when it came to Dante and certain things that he can take on, because they build him up to be this superpowered tank like we've known him for in the first half of the first episode, only to have him one-upped and incapacitated by Lady during their encounters. While they did go tick for tack in Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening, Dante would usually shrug off anything that Lady threw at him like it was no big deal. And I honestly feel like we're gonna get to that phase in season 2, because it seems like Adi Shankar and the writers are taking their time to fully flesh out this universe, as opposed to just throw everything that we expect from Devil May Cry directly at us upon first viewing. And I feel like whatever he introduces or tries to adapt in this series, it's not gonna please everybody, based on the simple fact that a lot of these games were masterpieces and people just don't like seeing them change that much. But I do feel like fans are gonna be more receptive for what he does with the Devil May Cry 2 material, because that's a game that's a blemish on the franchise. And this season is gonna feature a lot of the elements from that particular entry. We had already gotten some in the first season in the form of Lucia, who made a cameo appearance. If you aren't aware, she was the secondary protagonist that you could play with in Devil May Cry 2, and she possessed her own demonic abilities thanks largely in part to another character that appeared at the end of season 1 of Devil May Cry Netflix, which is Arius, the CEO of the evil corporation known as Ouroboros. If you remember in the last episode, Arius started working alongside William Bane to enslave the demons in the Makai world, and they built a detention center to house all of them in there, and he's most likely going to be using them as test subjects, because in the original story from Devil May Cry 2, Arius is this modern day sorcerer who's very familiar with all the things associated with artifacts as well as demons, and he's been able to gain access to these things by way of his big mega corporation Ouroboros, which has also helped him get closer to achieving his ultimate goal of immortality. I'm also going to throw it out there that they're not just going to be experimenting on the demons from Makai, they're also going to be doing it with military technology, because we know that they like to implement certain things such as the infestants, which are these insectoid parasites that wield the ability to merge with and control man-made machines. But moving on, we gotta talk about this trailer, because the first thing we hear is Dante saying, "You thought I was too dangerous for the world," which is what Lady and Darkham thought of him, hence why they placed him in cryogenic sleep at the end of season 1. And as you can see, they're all working alongside Arius, and if you look close at this lady over here at the far right, you can tell that she's one of the mannequins that Arius created, similar to Lucia. They're also known as the Secretary, and you'll probably be seeing this character accompany Arius wherever he goes. But moving on, we can see that a little time has passed, because Dante's hair is longer, and we see him walking up to a newer version of his red trench coat, which looks synonymous with what we see him wear in Devil May Cry 1, because he has a black undershirt, not to mention that the hair is more in line with that particular entry, so it's obvious that they're taking a lot from that version of the character, because we've already seen the inexperienced version of the character in the previous season, so now he's transitioned into a more seasoned hunter. And we also see him receive these upgrades in the form of ebony and ivory, which a lot of fans were complaining about with the first season because those were absent, but it's kind of taken away from that story of Devil May Cry 1, the novel, where Dante is constantly running through all of these different pistols due to them not being able to handle his grip strength, but now he has something that's going to be able to do that with these new upgraded pistols. And as you can see, these are basically a one-to-one reimagining of the guns that we see in the games, even featuring portraits of two different women, one with black hair and one with blonde hair on the grips, hence the names Ebony and Ivory. As to what's engraved on the pistols is anyone's guess. I would like to believe that it's Ebony and Ivory on the inward side, as well as 4 Tony Redgrave by 45 caliber artworks on the outside, since that's usually what you see in each iteration of the guns. And speaking of 45 caliber artworks, we can't go without talking about the person who actually owns that name, that being Nell Goldstein, because if you look over in the far corner, you can see her sitting at a desk looking mighty proud of the work that she's done for Dante. And for the most part, this character is very obscure because she's only made an appearance in the graphic novel, and her name was briefly mentioned in Devil May Cry 5 by her adoptive granddaughter Nico Goldstein. But it looks like Adi Shankar and the writers are making it a point to bring her to life in this anime, similar to how they did for Enzo and the White Rabbit in season 1, which are characters who also only appeared in the novel and manga. But anyways, as you can see, Nell's design looks to be on par with what we saw with her in the novel. She has a very middle-aged, older lady look, like she's going to play a big sister figure to Dante and provide him with some of her own custom firearms. But moving on, we got to talk about the biggest elephant in the room and the biggest scene stealer of them all, Vergil, which has been causing a lot of commotion on the internet, some of which have started with this whole Hairgate argument, talking about how his hair does not fit the character, which has led to many fans labeling him as chopped Vergil. Now, do I believe that his design looks bad? Not at all, man. I feel like it's perfectly fine. If anything, he looks like an amalgamation of DMC 3, 4, and 5 Vergil. Most of the suit looks like how it looked in DMC 3 and DMC 4 SE, with the boots taking heavy inspiration from Devil May Cry 5. And if you ask me, the hair kind of looks how it looked in the key art for DMC 3. I can also see a little bit of DMC 5 and a little bit of DMC 4 SE in there. So yeah, it's not that big of a deviation as people are making it out to be. I just feel like going into this series, anybody who hated the first season is instantly going to go in with seething resentment towards this second one, because there's been a lot of commotion with all the different DMC fandoms and communities on the internet, which, hey, nothing is above criticisms. You know, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'm just in that select group that doesn't mind any of these changes because I see this as its own separate thing. As Adi Shankar has said multiple times, this is an alternate timeline that's not directly connected to the games, because he wanted to focus more on the essence of the characters as opposed to the essence of the original video games they came from. But anyways, if you guys remember in the first season, Vergil made multiple appearances as his Nello Angelo form, but later appears as his regular human self at the end of the season. He was presumed dead after he and his mother Eva were attacked by demons, but at some point it was revealed that he was alive. It was already highly alluded to by the White Rabbit.
I know who you are. There's only one way you could have gotten the amulet piece and this blood.
As well as the demon Plasma, who stated that they needed a person's blood in order to mimic their looks. But anyways, we get a scene that looks like it picks up right after the one we left off with at the end of season 1, where Vergil breaks into one of the demon detention centers and lays waste to a lot of Darkham soldiers. It's from there that we see him put in work on other Darkham soldiers and execute one of his coolest moves, the Judgment Cut. You can also spot the aftermath of these attacks in the surveillance footage being shown off to Dante earlier in the trailer. And in another scene, you can see him destroying what looks to be some kind of aerial vehicle, and I'm just gonna go ahead and guess that it could be a infested vehicle that I mentioned earlier from Devil May Cry 2, because if Darkham is working alongside Ouroboros, then there's a high probability that this could be the case. But anyways, the last thing that we have to talk about, and arguably the thing that I share a similar sentiment with some of the detractors of this show, would have to be the verbal exchange between Dante and Vergil. And it's not so much the actual dialogue, but it's how it's delivered, particularly with Vergil. And it's crazy because, if I'm not mistaken, he's using the same voice actor, but if you go back to the last episode of season 1 where he makes that epic entrance and lays waste to all those Darkham soldiers, his voice is a lot darker.
The Sapients and their armies, unaware of the storm they ride into. I am that storm.
And and I'm not sure if it's because he came in his Nello Angelo form shortly before he transformed back into his normal form, or if they had a change in direction. If I'm not mistaken, he's being voiced by Robbie Daymond, and if you guys know anything about Robbie Daymond, then you know he has different registers when it comes to his voice performance. The guy can go from being a happy, jovial character like we've seen with Prompto from Final Fantasy 15 to a very stoic character who has a lot of timbre in their voice, similar to how we heard with his performance in Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, which is the style of voice I think he should be trying to use for this version of Vergil. But for whatever reason, he's going for the Prompto Final Fantasy 15 version, which is very high pitched and sounds too out of character for Vergil.
I hoped it would be you, little brother.
And it could be that this is the trailer where they just use one of the takes that won't ultimately make it into the final version of this show, because there have been many instances where a trailer is spliced a certain way where it takes like a person's voice performance or a take and they use it for the trailer exclusively, but they don't use it for the show. So I'm hoping that that's the case for this particular version of Vergil, and we will get that voice that we heard at the end of season 1, because I don't want it to be higher pitched than what it needs to be. I want them to try to at least emulate the performance of Vergil's original voice actor Daniel Southworth. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. What did you think about this breakdown? Are you excited for what's to come with Devil May Cry Season 2 Netflix? Or do you feel like it's going to be a bit of the same things that you were probably disappointed in with the first season? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, I ask you to like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you really enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on all the different social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But once again, this is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.